And I was getting really bored. And my sister she was the one who sort of motivated me. She says, well, she's like, you can work anywhere. Why are you here? And I was like, oh yeah, that's a good point.
You had a job where it didn't matter where you worked to start with.
Yeah, initially. But for some reason, I had just done that job in one place. Like I was just used to the old mindset, like you couldn't really do that. But yeah, now I realize you can sort of do that anywhere. And a big part of it was that book, 4 Hour Work Week, because it kind of flipped everything on its head for me. Like instead of me sort of changing everything about my life to fit into the business, I got to flip it around, or it made me realize I could flip it around and to like redesign my business to make it work for my life.
I can't wait to share with you our quick interview with Duane, our good friend who we met here at Sun & Co. In this interview, we're going to talk about him being a remote worker since 2011. How does he pay his bills? What got him on the plane? And how does he make business connections and friends while traveling for all of these years? So let's dive right into the interview. Before we get started, we just want to give a shout out to Office R&D, who is our sponsor on today's episode. They are a co-working management software company that helps workspaces around the world deliver better experiences to their customers. They share our values of promoting and championing remote work, and they've been our biggest supporters since day one. Okay, so let's continue. Okay, so we are here today interviewing Duane, this amazing guy. And one thing that we wanted to talk to him about was how he got into this lifestyle, and also kind of just your origin story. So Duane, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So my name's Duane Story. I'm originally from close to Vancouver, Canada. I'm a software engineer by education, but I eventually sort of migrated into doing web development, mostly to start out on my own websites, but then eventually for clients as well. So, yeah.
Awesome. And how long have you been traveling for?
My first trip was to Buenos Aires, Argentina, I think in 2011. So I guess 8 years I've been on the road.
That is a long time.
Yeah.
So how are you able to sustain this lifestyle? You said you're a web developer, but does that make enough money that you're able to travel and everything? So tell us, people are wondering, how do you do it?
Well, it's interesting because one of the first blog posts I did after being in Buenos Aires was just how actually I saved more money being on the road than when I was back in Canada. So I think people underestimate their costs at home. Like for example, like my vehicle at home, even though I own it, just taking it off the road saved me about $500 Canadian a month, just because insurance and maintenance and gas and all these things. And so all these expenses that I had in Canada, I suddenly no longer had when I'm on the road. So I actually found, coupled with the lower cost of living that a lot of places people end up in, like Thailand or Argentina at the time, I was actually saving more money than at home. So yeah, so for me it was like a great way to save money. But in terms of how I make money now, I mostly do client work online for web development. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, I'd say my standard of living is the same, if not more, just because factors in quality of life on the road. And
so you were doing software developing initially?
Yeah, so my full-time job before I hit the road, I was doing engineering for a Vancouver voice over IP company, and then eventually I quit that and started my own sort of web consulting company, sort of focused around WordPress, building websites, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then I was in my hometown for a couple of years working sort of on that, and my sister was, and I was getting really bored, and my sister she was the one who sort of motivated me. She says, well, she's like, you can work anywhere. Why are you here? And I was like, oh yeah, that's a good point. So then I just read The 4 Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss, and he was big on Argentina and tango and steaks and stuff. So I decided to book my first trip there, just one-way ticket, and to see what happened. And 7-8 years later, I'm still going. So
that's so cool. So you basically, just so people can hear it, you had a job where it didn't matter where you worked to start with.
Yeah, initially, but for some reason I had just done that job in one place. Like I was just used to the old mindset, like you couldn't really do that. But yeah, now I realize you can sort of do that anywhere. And
that's so cool.
Yeah.
So for you, it was more like breaking out of the mindset.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I think a big part of it was that book, 4 Hour Work Week, because it kind of flipped everything on its head for me. Like instead of me sort of changing everything about my life to fit into the business, I got to flip it around, or it made me realize I could flip it around and to like redesign my business to make it work for my life. And then, yeah, so I made the changes subtle changes to the business such that I could travel easier and do things on the road. And
that's awesome. So what would you say to someone who is thinking of starting to work remotely or travel and they're scared about getting on the plane? Like, what helped you get on the plane and really get going?
You know, I had a conversation with my father, and that was one of the key things. And he kind of walked me through what the worst case scenarios would be. And when I did that exercise with him, I realized the worst case scenario was actually not that bad. The worst case scenario is I buy a one-way ticket back home to Canada on my visa, like not even with money I have. And then I just, you know, put out some resumes again and I'm back to work, should it fail.
Yeah.
But it never failed, and I don't think it will. I mean, as long as you have a base level of income, like I would make sure you have a little bit of income before you hit the road. But even with that, like especially working from coffee shops back home, I didn't have a lot of connections. So even in terms of business contacts, this lifestyle has been much better for me. So I think in terms of generating future business, I think it's a really good avenue for someone working remotely or working on something. So I think it would lead to more business down the road. So as long as they have a base level and they're willing to take a little bit of risk, but I think it'll work out.
So what do you mean by business contacts? I think that's maybe something that we can talk about with like co-living, co-working. Is that what you mean by that? By you're able to meet these people?
So like back home, I was just like working from Starbucks, and there's little local groups, but the local groups are mostly focused on local people. And so I find in like co-working groups in various cities and co-living spaces, you get people coming and going, but they're all sort of like-minded, especially in these kind of places. Like they're all entrepreneurial, they all have businesses, and so they A, have the same lifestyle as you, which often means that B, they have some of the same goals as you, and C, that they understand sort of how this lifestyle is and how to make it work. And so I think those are really good business contacts to have. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
You found a lot of your work through just meeting people and...
I personally haven't found more work just because I have sort of enough work. But what it's really been good for me is business growth in terms of skills and whatnot. Like when I was in Morocco last year, I had just come out of working on my own company for a few years and my head had been down. I didn't have a lot of time. So it's really useful for me just having roundtable discussions. Like what are the tools everyone are using? Like what are the things I may have missed in the last few years because I hadn't, you know, kept up to date on the skills or whatever. So it really helped me because then I went away and then I learned all these things. And yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I want to wrap it up by saying we met at Sun & Co, a co-living space here in Spain. So tell me what your experience has been here at Sun & Co.
Well, this is my 4th time, I think. So
that's amazing.
Yeah, so I've had a really good experience, and that's only in the span of about a year. But I really like Spain. Really love the people. I always get a chance to meet like great new people like you, and I'd say not only business contacts, but when you leave and you walk away with actual like real friendships, I think that's a really great thing. And I think a place like this is really conducive to generating friendships. So
that's awesome. Yeah, I'm really happy I was able to meet you.
Yeah, thanks, you too.
And I hope we are still friends.
Yeah, we will be. So, and some of you will be friends soon too.
Yes,
so.
Come out here and hang out with us.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much, Duane.
No problem.
I think this will definitely help people who are thinking about it, a little bit nervous, on the fence.
Yeah, you can do it. Good luck.
For sure. Cool. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thanks.
I loved speaking to Duane. I feel like he's the original remote worker without even realizing it. And one thing I really learned from my interview with him was how he didn't realize that he could work remotely. It took his sister telling him and reading some books for him to shift his mindset to realize my job lets me work remotely. Why am I not traveling with this or doing something? So I wonder how many of us have the flexibility in our jobs, or we can create it easily and we just don't realize it. So what can we shift in our jobs in order for us to have a more flexible lifestyle? Maybe it's not traveling the world full time, but maybe taking a week or 2 off and going and working remotely in another country or another city. So lots of great things coming from this interview, and I hope you also enjoyed it. Hit like at the bottom of the screen, subscribe to our channel, and we can't wait to see you next time. Bye guys.